Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Season and Serve. My name is Melissa and today we are in the kitchen, which means we're cooking up a delicious seasonal recipe. And today we are making this delicious beef stew with dumplings. This is a great recipe to make in the late fall and the winter months because it is so comforting, it is so warming, and it is going to be perfect for any cold day. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make the best version of beef stew with dumplings. The meat inside is going to be super tender and fall apart. The vegetables are going to be perfectly cooked, and your dumplings are going to be super light and fluffy. So if you want to see how to make my beef stew with dumplings, just keep on watching. All right, so we're going to begin this recipe by preparing the beef. And for the beef here, I have some stewing beef from my butcher, and I'll show you here. I had him cut it up into pretty large chunks. These are maybe 5 centimeter cubes. So pretty big, and I like to have them a little bit bigger because the stew is going to cook for a while, and as it cooks the beef shrinks and it's going to get super tender as well, so it'll fall apart and kind of flake into pieces. And if you have them too small, they'll just kind of disintegrate into the soup, so that's why you want fairly large chunks. And to bring out the most flavor of this beef, we are going to brown it in a pot, and that just gets a delicious crust on the outside and really gives the stew that beefy flavor. But in order to do that properly, we have to make sure that the beef has been dried off because it has a lot of moisture on it right now, and that moisture will prevent the beef from browning properly. So to make sure that the moisture is off, I'm just going to pat it dry with some paper towel. And you want to make sure that it's dry on all sides because we're going to be browning it on all sides. And this is definitely going to take a couple paper towels, but this step is definitely worth it. I find that a slightly more thorough way to dry the beef is to actually pick up a whole piece and put it in the paper towel and just kind of smush it to dry on all sides. So this step is definitely a little bit of work, but it is worth it because if you were to add the beef as it is now, when it still has moisture on it into the pan, it just won't brown properly and it'll kind of steam and you won't get as much beef flavor out of it. And as I mentioned, I'm using beef stewing meat for this recipe because it is cheap, and it's cheap because it is a little bit tougher, but we're going to cook this for a while, so it'll get nice and tender and delicious. So you can save a little bit of money by using the cheaper cuts of meat and cooking it longer. It's typically how it works. And I'm going to give it one more pat down with a clean paper towel here, just to get any excess moisture off. And look at that. You can see how much of a good job I did. It's barely anything coming off of this. All right, we're going to toss these and wash our hands really thoroughly. All right, now that our beef is all dried off, we are going to season it with some black pepper. And I just have just regular black pepper in my pepper mill here. And we're going to give it a good coat on just 2 sides. So we're going to put it on the first side here, flip it, and then add some more black pepper. Now you'll notice that I'm not adding the salt quite yet. And that's because if we add the salt right now, it'll draw the moisture out of the beef, which will undo all the work that we just did by drying it off. So I'm going to add the salt as we're cooking it, which is a perfectly fine thing to do. You know, it's such a small step, but it does make a difference. You know, it's not like major, but we want to make sure that we get a really nice flavorful beef stew, and we don't want any moisture for that. So now that the beef is all coated in pepper, we're going to start to brown it. And I'm just going to grab my pot and I'll meet you over at the stove. All right, so we're over by the stove and I have my pot here. I have my Dutch oven all ready to go. And we're going to begin by browning the beef. So I'm going to put this over medium-high heat. And we're also going to add a little bit of cooking olive oil to the bottom of the pan. We don't need a lot because the beef does have a little bit of fat. So just a little bit to get it going. So we're going to space out the beef, give it lots of room to brown. So when you add the beef, it is going to stick to the bottom of the pan, but that's okay. You'll know the beef is done and ready to turn when it releases perfectly from the pan and you can flip it. If you're having to fight with it, give it a few more minutes, let it fully cook and relax, and then flip it. All right, so it's smelling delicious and you can see this beef is ready to flip. And look at that crust on it. That is all flavor and it's going to give you the best beef stew ever. So we're going to flip that over. Oh, that one's ready too. Look at that. Oh, perfect. So after it's browned on the first side, we are going to add the salt. So I'm just going to do a pinch of salt, sprinkle it over the beef, and we're going to let it cook. I noticed the pot was getting a little bit too hot. I find with the Dutch oven, once it gets to high, it just like holds that heat. So I actually reduced it to medium. So that's gonna give us a nice brown without burning the beef. All right, so now the beef is all browned and we're gonna take it out of the pot. My little trick for actually saving some dishes is to take the beef out and put it on the lid that's inverted. It's a very sturdy lid, so it'll capture all the juice and then we can add that back to the pot without having to dirty another dish. All right, so we're gonna add just a little bit more oil to the pan and then we'll do our next batch. And we're gonna repeat this process until we've browned all of the beef. So as the beef is cooking, I just wanted to clean up my area and also mention that sometimes you'll see beef stew recipes that actually begin by coating the beef in flour. And the purpose of that is to actually help thicken the stew, but that is not my preferred way to cook it because the flour will coat the beef and then you won't have the contact of the beef with the bottom of the pot, so you won't get that brown crust. What does brown in that process is the flour, and brown flour can be delicious. It can be really like rich and nutty, but it does not compare to the flavor of brown beef like we're doing it right now. It is completely different. So I avoid doing that step. You can do it if you want, but I'm just saying this is a better way to get more beef flavor out of the stew. Just my tips, which I think is what you guys are here for. So I have the last batch of beef cooking right now, and we're gonna start preparing the vegetable. Singular vegetable, because the only thing I'm going to cook the beef in and stew it together with is onion. We are going to add carrots and potatoes after, but we're going to do it at a later stage because I don't want these to get overcooked, which is another qualm I have with beef stew sometimes. I'm going to cut the onion here, remove the skin, and this is a really big onion, so I don't think I'm going to use all of this. It's quite a lot, so I'll probably use about 2/3 of this onion today. Yeah, 2/3. Keep that off to the side. We'll use that in a different recipe. But we're just gonna chop the onion into large-ish pieces. We're not gonna do a fine dice or anything because I do wanna still have decent pieces of onion in the stew. So the onion's all chopped. I will prepare these vegetables later. And talk to you about why, again, I'm adding them at a later stage of the cooking process. But we're gonna get the beef out of the pan, and then we're gonna add this, and it's gonna pick up all those delicious brown bits in the bottom of the pan. Again, adding more flavor to our beef stew. All right, so this is a bit of an aerial shot, so you can see all of the brown bits in the bottom of the pan. And because we cooked it over medium heat, these didn't burn. Like, it is a dark brown, but it's not burnt, which is ideal. Exactly what we want. So to pick up all that flavor, we're gonna add a little bit more oil, and then we're gonna add our onions. And onions have a lot of moisture in them, so as they cook, they'll release the moisture and pick up all those brown bits in the bottom of the pan. And we'll help it along with just a little pinch of salt. And maybe some more black pepper. Why not? Should call this pepper beef stew at this point. I'm gonna give that a little bit of a mix, and I am gonna switch to a wooden spoon because a metal utensil in the bottom of a cast iron pan does not mix. You don't wanna scratch it. I also have a couple ingredients from the garden that we're gonna put in here, so let's go harvest those together. All right, so this is my beautiful herb planter. I am so proud of it. But from here, I don't need sage or parsley or oregano. I need a little tiny bit, like I'm not even kidding, just the very tip of the rosemary, because I don't like too much rosemary flavor in my beef soup or my beef stew, but you'll definitely notice a difference if you don't add that. And we're also gonna get a little bit of thyme here. The thyme just adds that nice freshness, that woodiness. That's literally all we need. Actually, I lied, we're gonna get some chives as well for the dumplings. Now it is winter and the chives are definitely dwindling, as you can see. There is not too much left, but I am gonna take what I can here for the dumplings. Oh, I like a lot of chives, so I'm gonna probably take that amount. There we go. And then the final item we need from the garden is a bay leaf. So I'm gonna take this beautiful one here. There we go, final ingredient from the garden. So we're gonna take this, our chives, our rosemary and thyme inside, and we'll give them a good wash. Oh my gosh, Walking in here literally smells so good. It smells like beef and onions. All right, so you can see here, onions have caramelized, it looks really good, and the little brown bits are really starting to come off. But if there's any brown bits still left in there, that's totally fine because we're gonna add our beef stock right now. So we're adding 6 cups of beef stock in total. And that doesn't look like a lot of liquid, but we're gonna add the beef, we're gonna add the vegetables, and it is gonna be the perfect amount once everything's added in. So once you have the stock added, we're just gonna take our wooden spoon and scrape up all the bits on the bottom of the pan. So that's perfect. At this point, we're gonna add in our beef, and we're just gonna slide it in here. You can see all the juices that got caught on the pot lid. Ooh, might use some tongs for this actually. And there we go. All the juices go back in there too. Scrape off any little remaining bits. All right, so we have our bay leaf as well as our thyme and rosemary. And the leaves of the thyme and rosemary will just kind of fall off in the soup, but I don't want to have to fish out the stem. So in order to not lose that, what I did is I folded the bay leaf in half and made a little slit with the tip of my knife. And then I'm just gonna slide these right through. Get them about halfway. Then all you have to do when it's done is just fish out the bay leaf and the stems will come with it. Isn't that smart? So that's gone in. And then the final ingredient that we're gonna add now is some Worcestershire sauce. This adds some depth and complexity to the beef stew. And I'm adding about a tablespoon now. And we're gonna add a tablespoon once it's done cooking as well, just so it has a little bit of that tart, kind of like woody, delicious Worcestershire sauce flavor near the end. So now we're gonna mix everything together just to get it all combined. And then we're gonna preheat our oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're gonna cook it in the oven with the lid on. So now that's come to a simmer, we're gonna cover this up. And then we're gonna pop it in the oven. All right, in you go. See you in a couple hours. So while the stew's cooking in the oven, I'm gonna get our vegetables all prepared. And for the vegetables, I'm keeping it super simple. We're using carrots and then some potatoes. And I'm mixing some potatoes today just because of what I have on hand. But I have Yukon Gold potatoes, which is what I typically use for all my cooking. I also have some German butter potatoes that I got at the farmer's market. And these might be outcompeting the Yukon Gold as my favorite potato. But you can just use Yukon Golds if that's what you have on hand. Get off the counter. What are you doing? You smell the beef, huh? Are you a big beef fan? Not really. She likes chicken and she likes salmon. Salmon is her favorite, right, baby? Yeah. No going on the counter when Mama's filming, okay? I'm gonna wash my hands because I know someone's gonna say in the comments, oh, you touched your cat, you gotta wash your hands. I know. All right, so we're gonna prepare our vegetables here, and I have a carrot here, fairly large carrot, and I'm just gonna give it a quick peel. Now these large carrots, I'm not a super big fan of. Honestly, I find them a little bit too sweet, and just the size of it's like kind of annoying. I don't know. I like smaller, more delicate traditional carrots, but again, this is what I have on hand, so we're gonna use this in the recipe. Not the end of the world. I'm just gonna cut it into large pieces like this. Now, I do like the big chunks of carrot because they're nice and vibrant in the stew. They stand out, especially amongst all those big chunks of beef and the potatoes that we're gonna cut up as well. So I like to do big, like 1 centimeter chunks. Some of them are a little bit bigger than that, but we'll live. Move those out of the way. And then I'm gonna cut up the potatoes as well. Again, probably maybe like 2 centimeter pieces for the potatoes. I'm gonna cut that and just cut it 3 across. Look at that, perfect size potato. My beef stew recipe is definitely unique in that we add the vegetables closer to the end of the cooking process. And that's because I don't like it when you stew the beef for so long with the vegetables and the vegetables get overcooked. It's not good. It's very flavorful, I will say, but it's just like kind of not the texture that I want for beef stew. We're still gonna cook these for about 30 to 40 minutes. So it's still gonna get the ability to impart its flavor and also absorb a lot of the beef stew as well. So we're not missing out on any flavor. We are just making sure that the texture of the vegetables is perfect. So that is my other little hack for beef stew as well. So we did all of our little prep work. The root vegetables are all ready. And again, the root veggies, perfect to use during the fall and winter because they're always in stock and they're always delicious. So really great fall winter recipe again. But now that we have everything prepared, I'm gonna wait for the stew to finish cooking. We're gonna add the vegetables in, and then I'll show you how to make the delicious dumpling batter because the dumplings are the true star of this beef stew. They are so good. All right, so stew has just come out of the oven and it is looking so good. When the lid looks like this, you know you're doing something right when you're cooking. All right, and now that it's out, we are gonna add our vegetables. And at this point, the meat is starting to get tender, but it's not like fully ready. So we are gonna cook this on the stove for another 30 to 40 minutes. It'll cook the vegetables and it'll make the meat a little bit more tender. So we're gonna take this over to the stove and then I'm gonna partially cover it and cook it over a medium heat. All right, lid partially on and we're good to go. All right, so now we're gonna make our dumplings. And to start off the dumplings, we need some flour. So I have a big container here, all-purpose flour, and we need 1.25 cups. And to measure your flour properly, it's always good to use 2 measuring cups. And I have 1.25 cups because that's exactly how much we need. But if you were to dig your whole measuring cup into the flour and scoop it, the flour gets like really compact in there and you normally end up with more flour than you actually need. So what I like to do is take the small one and gradually fill up the large 1 cup measure. Then when you fill it to the top, take the back of a knife, level it off, and you got 1 cup of flour. So we're gonna put that in the bowl and then we're gonna need another 1/4 cup. So we're gonna reverse this. We're gonna take the big cup, fill a small cup, and then level it off. And there we go. Perfect. Another thing we need is some baking powder, and this makes the dumplings super light and so fluffy. So we're adding 2 teaspoons in here. And of course, with all my recipes, you'll find the full measurements and directions on my website, which I'll leave the link to in the description box below. The last ingredient we need is some salt. So I'm gonna add 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt in there. I should say last dry ingredient that we need, because we're gonna add some other things if you can't tell. But we're gonna mix that all up together just to get it nice and combined. All right, so for our wet ingredients, we're gonna add some butter. This is about 2 tablespoons melted, mostly melted. And we're also gonna add 3/4 cup of milk. And I always use 2% milk whenever I'm cooking, so we're adding the 2% today. And we're gonna mix that through. Before it's fully incorporated, I am gonna sprinkle in some chives as well. Totally optional, but I really like the chive flavor in here. Adds a bit of brightness and freshness to a really thick and deep, bold flavored stew. So an excellent addition. As you can see, it's super thick, clings to the whisk, which is exactly what we want for dumplings. Let's go add this to our stew. All right, so, ooh, the stew is looking so good. It smells incredible in here. I wish you could smell it. As you can see here, it is not very stew-like. It is very loose. You know, we are talking more beef soup vibes here. We want stew. So in order to thicken it up, I am gonna add just a little bit of cornstarch slurry. So I'm just gonna pour that in and give it a mix. In order to activate the cornstarch, you wanna bring it to a boil. Still a little bit runny, but not awfully runny, which is ideal because the dumplings are gonna soak up a little bit of that water, release a bit of the starch and the gluten into there, and it's gonna thicken up the soup a little bit more. Now that the stew is nice and thick, I'm gonna turn this to medium-low. We just wanted to get it to stop bubbling as much as it is right now because we're gonna add our dumplings on top. And all I'm gonna do is just scoop a little bit of the dumplings, like a heaping tablespoon like this, and then we're just gonna drop it in. I'm just gonna use my finger, and we're gonna pop that on top. Spacing them out at least 1 inch or so, just because they do kind of puff up because of that baking powder we added. And we want all the delicious stew to kind of go in between the dumplings. So now that all the dumplings have been added, we are going to cover them and we're going to cook them for about 8 to 10 minutes. After 8 to 10 minutes, we're going to come back And then we're gonna flip them around and cook them for another 5 minutes, just so it cooks all the way through on both sides. All right, so it's been about 8 minutes, and we're gonna check the dumplings and wait till you see how these transform. Oh, look at that. They are so puffy and beautiful from that baking powder we added. And I can smell the chives, which is amazing. So I'm just gonna use my spoon here, and I'm just gonna carefully flip each one over. Might need a little assistance. Sometimes you need 2 spoons. And then we're gonna do a little flip. Look at that. Oh my goodness. You can see why I used one of my larger Le Creuset pans, because we need space for all these beautiful dumplings. All right, so that's been flipped over. We're gonna cook this for another 5 minutes, covered over medium-low heat. All right, so our beef stew is all done. And let's see what it looks like. Stunning. As a final garnish here, I'm gonna sprinkle over a little bit more chives to give it a nice green color. You can also add peas to here if you have frozen peas. It's always a classic in beef stew. I don't have any today, and I like the recipe actually without it, so I think the chives give it that nice pop of green and that beautiful freshness, and it's just beautiful. And for final hit of flavor, I'm just gonna sprinkle in a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, fresh. It really makes a difference. And you only need about a tablespoon, you don't need too much. So there we have it, our beautiful beef stew with dumplings. All we have to do is plate it up, or bowl it up, I should say. This is always my favorite part of the video, when I get to taste whatever we've made. And the stew is just like, it's like a gravy, which is exactly what you want when you have beef stew. So we're gonna give it a taste. It's gonna be hot, but we're gonna do it. Got a little bit of dumpling and gravy. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to taste this. It's perfect, especially with the chives in there and the veggies. Oh, so if you want to make this fabulous beef stew with dumplings, you'll find the recipe on my website, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box below. And while you're there, browse around my website, because I have lots of other amazing fall and winter recipes available. And if that's not enough recipes for you, I have a cookbook. So if you want more delicious seasonal recipes, you'll find it in my cookbook, Season and Serve, a cookbook for all seasons. There is an amazing recipe in here for my Halloween dinner menu. Each chapter is for the seasons, and for the fall, I created a Halloween dinner menu. And on there, relatively similar, I would say, to the beef stew, is this amazing braised beef short ribs. So if you want that recipe plus 71 other recipes, you will find that in my cookbook, and I'll leave the link to that in the description box below. And additionally, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, because there's going to be lots more amazing recipes coming up. And this is going to be the last of the fall kind of content, I think, for the year, because next week we're going to be launching into some holiday content, which I am so excited for. I love the holidays. I love Christmas, and we're going to be doing everything. We're going to be cooking. We're going to be decorating. We're going to do a home tour to show you all of my Christmas trees. I have 3. It is going to be amazing. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on that. And finally, if you want to enjoy more seasonal living content from me, make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram as well. But thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to enjoy the best of the season every day.